So you can sit on something or on the floor or on a piece of furniture, whatever makes it easiest to sit, so you don't have to be preoccupied with the discomfort or struggle of sitting. But you can just use a supported but upright position that is friendly to your body. So whatever that might be, maybe take a moment to find that or see what that might be for you, where your spine is upright, where you're self-supported, upright, but also supported from the ground and from the rest of your body. Maybe, you know, what position is good for the legs. So that could be anything. And just giving yourself a moment to arrive there and making any little changes you want to make that make it easier, more comfortable, more supported in terms of your position, in terms of allowing yourself to have your weight and to let the ground support that. Noticing anything that comes up or that is there. And knowing that if you're noticing that, whatever it is, it's a good sign. That means you're present and you're in your body. So that's a good start. And you can also close your eyes if you want to rest them for a moment. You could really allow yourself to just go inwards. If you want to stay more connected to the outside world, that's also fine. So check which ones feels better for you. And then just let your head move a little bit. Maybe, you know, in whatever way, it doesn't matter. A little side to side, like a little side bend, or maybe it's more like a sort of rotation or a nodding. Just exploring really the movement that's available at the neck, that's easy at the neck. So you don't have to necessarily push through any grinding tight bits, but just appreciating that there is some movement possible that's easy. So you're choosing the easy movement, because it doesn't always have to be a challenge to move. It's just like, oh yeah, that can move. And maybe just going with whatever feels nice in terms of moving the head. So it's following your own experience of what feels good. I guess that's a pretty good indicator of what you also might need or could benefit from. The body usually knows what it wants or identifies it. And then maybe as you're doing that, you might notice that other parts below can also join in and move. So maybe the shoulders might join in a little bit with this neck movement in a small or in a bigger way, or the whole upper spine can sort of bend a little or flex or extend and support the head in its movement, so that the movement is no longer at the neck only. It can still move there, but underneath is joining in and is taking over the movement a bit. And again, just following, if you're noticing any impulses to go somewhere, to go into a little stretch or a particular shape, just notice how your body just tells you pretty much where it wants to go, and then you can go there slowly. See if it's nice or if you want to move away from it. Just having the freedom to let that whole spine move in whatever way it wants. Maybe it's a really tiny, gentle movement. Maybe you're making it a little bigger, where your arms support you so that you're still somewhat upright and supported. And then, of course, you can also bring your arms into it. So if the shoulders were already moving, you might move them a little more while the spine is still moving. Or maybe even letting your elbows join in. So it's the whole upper arm bones joining into the movement, whatever that is. And then maybe if it feels good to bring the whole arm into it. So then the elbow, from the elbow into the wrists, one arm at a time or both at the same time. Again, wherever it takes you. Maybe the rest is still taking part, and just noticing as you're doing that, that the whole upper body is really moving while the lower body stays really sort of ground it like it's your base, the legs and the pelvis. And that's okay, they get to move a little later. And then when you feel like you've sort of done all the movements that are easily possible and that are welcome through the upper body, just find your middle again. So where you feel balanced on your pelvis and without making any particular shape, just arriving back, sitting, whatever that is now, might have changed a bit. Just acknowledge any little changes. And then really tune into the sitting bones or where you feel heaviest on your pelvis. And you might send those sitting bones a little bit more into the ground, like you're meeting the ground a bit more, so it makes you a little taller, not in a strained way, but in a gentle way. You can always let that go again, but just acknowledging that when your sitting bones reach down, the rest of you goes a little up. And you can also make that bigger, so you can really let your sitting bones sort of just kind of curl underneath you, almost like they're slightly turning, they're looking away from the floor, they're looking more up, and then notice how that makes the rest of you curl up or collapse a little. And then the sitting bones kind of orient down again, meeting the ground, and that builds you up again or unravels you a little. So you can play with that a couple of times. Under this perspective that if a part of your lower body reaches down more, meets the ground more, it releases the other part of you up. And then also there's this sort of coming together in the other direction. And it's almost like a bit like a pulse or something as I'm doing it, a kind of, yeah, maybe a heart, like a slow heartbeat, or I don't know, a breath or something, this sort of expanding and connecting kind of thing. And then find a good middle. So somewhere where your sitting bones are meeting the floor a little bit, but not as much as they could. And you're somewhat up, right. And then notice your right arm. And then you're going to take your arm up to the ceiling in a minute. Don't do it yet. You could do it many different ways. You could just kind of have your elbow bend and then reach up, or it might be more like a straight raise. It might be out to the side. It doesn't matter. But you're going to take your arm up in a way where you can imagine that your hand is wanting to get lighter and the weight is going into your sitting bones. So the weight of your hand and your arm is going to travel somehow through your body into your sitting bones so that you can basically have the same or similar experience. And you might even take it a little further where your sitting bones reach down a bit more so that your arm can go even higher and you're reaching up. And then you're letting that again sort of recoil, and then the arm gets heavy again, the weight pours back into the hand. And you're noticing the difference when the hand is heavy again. And then you could imagine it's like water or heavy sand in your arm or in your hand. And it pours not just down into the shoulder, but all the way into your body and into the sitting bones. Maybe one sitting bone more than the other. And that's up to you which one that might be. What you're noticing, which one is taking more weight when that right arm goes up. Or if they're the same. And then just do that a couple of more times. Maybe you can also change slightly how you're reaching, because there are many ways to reach. But keeping this idea that actually it's not really your muscles having to lift your arm up, you're just negotiating where the weight goes that kept your arm heavy and how it's pouring right into you and connects to that sitting bone underneath or both. And then of course you can do the same on the other side. Might be different on that side or the same, something to find out. And maybe again, there's this kind of pulsing or expanding and recoiling quality that now is the arm, the hand, and the rest of the whole body. It's also just had this idea that, you know, it's a bit like if you're in your sort of magic bubble and you're touching with your fingertips, the top of it, and you're stretching it like a chewing gum bubble. And then you're kind of pulling it in, and it sort of becomes kind of more sort of dense and smaller. And then you're stretching back into it. It's just an idea that just popped into my head. And then that arm can also have a rest again. And then when your arms are both back down again, just take another moment to notice what's different. First of all, you might just feel that your hands have moved. In what way do you feel that? You can just sort of take a note of that. And how everything else is in this position. Has it changed how you sit, or has your experience changed somehow? Something different? And then you bring your awareness also to your surroundings, particularly, of course, the mat you're sitting on, and which way is it arranged. So if you were going to lie down in a moment, just notice how you would do that before you do it. Is there one particular side you will just kind of lean down towards? Do you have to pivot? Just having a sense of it. And then really slowly just follow that knowing which way it's going to go, whatever that is for you, or what it entails to get to lying down. So we've got this sort of sense of, like, from experience or what might happen, and then you let yourself move through it. And then you have a lie down on your back, maybe with a cushion, maybe with your legs long or bent. So again, just taking a moment to arrive there and following what the body wants in terms of position and how it's meeting the ground. And also notice that difference, how you're less upright now, but you're very supported. And gravity's got everything. So you can allow pretty much everything to be heavy. And how is that different? Was there a lot of effort involved in sitting still? Or did it feel more energized and now it's a little bit more restful or passive? Just getting a sense of the difference in the position and orientation. And then let one leg come up towards you so you can take a hold of it with one hand. So knee holding or bringing the leg up to hold the knee. The foot can just hang off if that's comfortable. And then the other leg's coming in as well. So you've got the knees somewhere over the hips. They could be a little closer to you or a bit further away for now. Pretty much maybe vertical, more or less, but in an easy way. And your hands might just have a bit of a hold of it, either on top of the knees or behind the thighs. Or if the arms are really not up for it, then you can also just let your legs hover there without the hands supporting. And so now there's something a bit more upright, which is the thigh bones, and the knees are lighter. And then just let your hands circle the knees in the air in a small way, so small circles. And you're gonna, the knees are really light. Again, the other end in the pelvis, the base in the pelvis is going to stay really heavy. So as you're circling the knees, and you can also just circle the knees on their own if they feel, particularly if they feel quite capable to easily move the legs and the hips without a lot of muscles gripping, that would be great, so that the muscles can get a little out of the way. And the base, that is the back of the pelvis that you can feel on the ground, really takes the weight of the leg on the legs. And of course, as you circle the knees, particularly if you're not holding on to the legs, there may be other things happening with the knees circling away. There's a little bit more happening in the lower abdominals. Maybe the back wants to rise, so you use those lower abdominals then to keep your back heavy. So that's all part still of your base, so that the knees can move free and easy. with or without the hands. You're really letting the weight of the thighs drop into the hips. And then you can kind of play a little bit with this. So maybe your hands are letting go if they're holding on for a moment, and you let one foot drop a little bit towards the floor, letting it touch the floor. It's kind of heavier then, but then you're bringing the leg back and all the weight pours back into the hip. And you can alternate and just play with that a little. Imagining again the weight pours into the foot, makes it drop, and then it pours back into the hip as the knee comes back up. And so whatever is close to the floor stays heavy on the floor. Of course, some other things are working as well. That's okay. And whenever that gets a little tiring on the back or anything else, you can always let your knees come closer again and pour the weight a little more into the mid-back. Before perhaps coming back for a little more. And you can also alternate it with letting one leg go up more. So you're kind of exploring again the different directions and how you're distributing the weight. So rather than just letting the foot go heavy and then the hip go heavy again, you could let the foot really go light. So that weight out of the foot is pouring into the thigh and then into the pelvis. And then maybe the other side. So depending on what feels right to you, where you can sense that, you can always support the leg as well. And then you get that bit of stretch through the back of the leg at the same time with the hands supporting. So that can be kind of a varied focus or benefit. You can also give the leg a bit of a shake, like you're shaking down that weight, all the kind of liquid in the foot and lower leg. It's shaken down like out of a watering can into the base. You can always alternate it again with then touching a foot down. It might feel a bit different then. That's what I'm noticing. Somehow it got easier after I shook the leg out. I see some feet sticking up into the air. That's very good. And then when you feel like you've kind of explored with both legs evenly, you could then let your feet find the floor again. And maybe you let your left leg, well, actually just pause there for a second. So the feet find the floor again with the knees bent. And you can also stretch them out long if you prefer, just noticing if the hips or the legs or the rest of you is a little different now. Just to check what that has done. And then you stand your right foot back up again, you leave the left one long. And just let that left long leg do a little roll, like a little windshield wiper on the foot. Just turning it in a little, turning it out. Again, could be small, or you can really go into the edges of that movement, keeping your heel heavy. So with all that ground support, it's really just moving without leaving the floor. It can roll, it can keep its weight. And the tail is still very heavy, the heel is heavy, and the leg is moving in between. And then let that left leg go kind of passive again. Your right foot is standing and the knee is sort of in line with the hip. And then stand into your right foot and reach to your right knee. So you're picking up the right side of your pelvis and the left side goes heavy. And it could be small and you can go really slow, or you can slowly keep going to wherever feels good. Taking a breath there, and then you slowly come back again so that the right hip drops heavy again. And your left foot might just kind of come back again to a bit more of a neutral place. And then again, you push the floor away with the right foot, reach your right knee over your toes, pouring your weight into the left hip, letting your left leg flop out a little maybe. And in that place, stay there long enough to maybe take 1 or 2 breaths. Like you can breathe into this sort of rotated lower body place into your pelvis from here. And then breathing out and letting that soften and drop as well. And do it in your own time a couple of times. You can let your arms join in and just notice where might they want to go, what feels good. Is it about stretching them away at the same time? So it becomes a whole body stretch and your spine can arch a little as well, depending on space. Or do they want to stay quite close to the body and kind of check on what's happening? And then go for your last one. And then slide that right leg out just to compare for a moment what your right and your left feel like, because that probably will be different. Just noticing what that has done to one side. What the difference is, because it may have felt fine or even good before. And now there's something even more free, more open, perhaps, that makes a new, better normal. And then your left leg stands up. And your right leg just gets for a moment that chill of just heavy heel rolling a little in and out with a heavy tail. And as you're doing that, it's such a small movement, it probably isn't very effortful or complicated. So just notice that it might be a restful activity. So it's quite easy, it's very supported. You could just imagine what it would be like if other things in the day were that easy, even though they're active. But a lot of you can also just be supported. And then your left leg might just stand into the ground to lift that side, to pour the weight into the right side. And the right leg is just passively receiving that and responding to when the left hip comes back down again. Again, there might be a deeper breath once you're up there, really feeling how that breath is moving past some muscular structures in front and back. We'll go 1 or 2 more times. And then when your left hip drops next time, you could stand both feet back up again. And again, taking a moment, noticing any changes, maybe in the breath, or different sensations in the legs or the hips or middle area. And then bring one leg at a time up one more time over your hips with the feet hanging off. And this time your arms could go up to the ceiling as well. But again, you're letting your arms be really supported by the ground. So your shoulders are standing on either side of you. You're not in a reach as such yet. It's just like you've got a strong base of your shoulder blades on the ground, just like you've got heavy back of pelvis, heavy feet, heavy head, and the whole length along the spine and the ribs on either side. All of that is supporting the extremities. And then you could just imagine you're not just going to imagine, you might do it, or you could reach your arms a little more and your legs, your feet might float up a little, opening the back of the knees to wherever you like, up to the ceiling, or you might go a little bit more at an angle, or you just open the back of your knees halfway. It's not about necessarily straightening anything, but it's like your extremities want to go up a little more and you just feel how much heavier the back of you gets. And then you let that drop back again. Shoulders and the feet go heavy again. And then it's a bit like your legs and arms want to get to the ceiling and the rest of you is dropping back into the back of you, into the ground to support that. So it could be quite small in terms of what the movement actually is, just as long as you can feel it. And you're also coming back again. You can always hug your knees back in again. And you could always add your head. So if you like to do a little more, in order to let your arms and legs go up, your head might also want to go up. And then it really has to be along your spine from the tail to maybe somewhere in the mid-back below the shoulders, where you're taking the weight from the head, the arms and the legs. And then everything drops back again. So it's like a whole body reach. And then you do maybe one or two more and you make them as easy as possible by giving all responsibility to the floor. You just go up there and let the floor support you in that. So you can meet it with the rest of you so that it's easier. And then you have a rest. And let the floor have everything again, maybe stretching out your legs, maybe keeping them hugged in, whatever you need, and just having a real rest. So just letting your eyes rest if they want to. Just sort of tracking how that activity subsides, or the energy kind of expenditure the energy that's been used, how that's refueling slowly. And if you've got your head up on something, just take it out or bring your head a little bit lower. Maybe giving yourself also a moment to just get used to that. So your head might want to move again a little bit from this place where it can be heavy rolling on the floor, where it can find sort of the shape of the neck that it wants. So does the head want to be a bit further back, or kind of wanting to bring the jaw down a bit, just maybe moving it around a bit to find a natural place. And then you can stand your feet back up again, but the feet and the knees are staying a little bit so spacious, hip width. And then let your knees slowly roll to the left. as far as you like. They might flop to the floor, or they might stay a little halfway. Take a breath there, and then imagine the back of your pelvis, particularly where it's lifted, wants to come back to the ground, and that brings the legs back, and then they go over to the other side. With, again, still a bit of space between them. The head might go a little the other way. You stay there wherever you get to for that in-breath. And then breathing out, letting the lifted hip find the ground again. May also be helpful to just think of the tail wanting to get back to the ground from that rotation. And then you keep going side to side, returning in that way. Maybe using an out breath, or the back of the pelvis like a magnet, getting drawn back to the ground. And next time you come back from the right, whenever that might be, you could then move into a bridge. So when you find your feet standing again, they send the floor down, and you pick up the pelvis and see if it wants to come up in line with the knees and the shoulders, or maybe it's a little lower. And then it rolls back down again. The pelvis sort of widely goes back to the ground, and then the knees are off again to the left. Head might roll to the right. And you go back to the right, so you're going each way. And when your knees come back from the right, you check when your feet are back fully on the floor, so that they can then stand, letting the weight pour into between the shoulder blades and, of course, the feet, so the middle can get lighter. And then it rolls down, and you go back to the left and back to the right. And you're sort of mixing the side-to-side movement with the bridge. And as you do that in your own pace, maybe the thing to play with is how smooth and continuous can you make it, so that two exercises really become one movement, so one flowing movement. So it might be that you're really tracking the feet as they roll sort of from one side to the other, and then as they're coming back to the middle, that's when you know that's the time when they're fully on the floor to go up in between. It may just be about just sensing how much you are in movement when there might be a slight pause or shift or a preparation for something else, or can it just kind of fluidly move and continue, so there's no end, no change as such. You could even, if it feels all pretty comfortable and easy to do, you could even see how quickly or how soon can you start the bridge. Maybe you're starting it when you're still on the way back from the right. So that would be coming back from the right. And how soon is it possible to actually start bridging? So you might still be on your way back to the middle and almost over back to the left as you're coming down, just to an extent that feels useful or good, not if it's a terrible struggle. But just playing with when does one movement start, and when does it or end, and when does another one begin, and how connected or flowing can that process be? And next time you're coming back from a bridge, you can just pause again, take your time to get there. And you might bring the cushion back under your head if you were using one. And again, just taking a moment to reset, to let your legs do what they want, or the rest, the arms too, for a moment. Maybe just checking how everything is now. And then you're going to roll onto your side, whichever side. Again, noticing how much you know which way you want to turn. And then you can just decide if you're keeping your head just on a cushion, or if you actually want to use your lower arm, or if you want to let your head hang towards the floor. Any of those things, as long as it's going to, again, involve a little bit of head rotation. So if it's comfortable in your neck and supported, that would be good. And then your knees are bent again. The feet are roughly lining up with your back. And check your hips are kind of on top of each other, and the shoulders are. And your top arm is in front of you. And you're taking a moment just really connecting with that underside of you. So you could rock a little bit and just go, yep, that's the bit that's heavy on the ground, that is connected to the ground. And then this can involve a bit of a funky eye exercise, but if that feels, either you can always take a break from it and kind of just go in and out of it, or you can also just do the movement without the eye involvement, because it might be a little difficult. But it has some potential to kind of really shift some stuff. So if you want to do the eye element of the exercise, you close your lower eye, whichever one that is, and you just keep the top one open. And when that gets too difficult, you can just open your lower eye, obviously, so it's not forced. But with your top eye, then you're looking at your hand that's on the floor. And then you can bring your hand on the floor up. So it's hovering in line, sort of hovering in line with the ground. And then you just move it a little bit up towards your head and down towards your leg. So your arm is sort of stabilizing in this kind of arc. And your top eye is just tracking where the hand is going. So you're going slow enough so that your eye can follow, just the top one ideally, but you know, never mind if you want to close the eyes or do both eyes. And so you're really giving that top eye the opportunity to do this. We usually have a dominant eye, just like we have dominant legs or arms. And you can explore a little bit of how far the hand can easily go, where your eye can go to without the head moving just yet. So it's going up and down maybe, but you can also then take it up to the ceiling in this whole sort of space that your eye can see. Like your arm is sort of drawing a circle. And then with your head comfortable in being able to turn, you could then make that a little bigger. So your arm might move a little further than where your eye can go. So your head starts to follow and your whole body starts to follow. It's still just the top eye that's following if you're up for that. And you're going into that sort of book opening movement where you're looking, or where your head turns towards the ceiling, your arm might go behind you, but just keep your arm moving around in a, just kind of however it comes to you, keeping it moving around the space above you, and your eye might be following, or you might just do the movement if the eyes are, if that's too uncomfortable. And you're letting now the head and the body follow. And you might even, when you feel like you've done that quite a few times, you might even bring your hand back to the floor and then turn it into that sort of proper circle where you're tracing the floor with your fingers, and you're check how much your eye can follow that. So how much your head needs to move to go to where the hand is going and maybe you're losing it somewhere. And then when you're going around, really trying to find your hand again. It's something to play with, so it doesn't have to be perfectly possible. It probably isn't. I can't see my hand behind me all the way. But just to see how far can I actually go with my eye, my head, the rest of my body to keep that hand in view as it goes around. And then, of course, there are some nice stretchy moments that you can also just have when resting your eyes. Just going one more time around, or whichever way you're doing it at the moment. And when you're coming back to the front with your hand back on the floor, you can you can hug your knee towards you, your top leg. So that's coming off the lower leg and you're hugging it in, and your hands and your eyes are both opening again. So that might suddenly feel a lot easier to look out of your eyes. I don't know. And then your hand, your top arm and your top leg are pushing in opposite directions. So you can push away with your foot and your arm is either pushing up or reaching up, whichever feels better. And then they come back together again. So the lower arm and leg are stabilizing. They can really drop into the ground so that you feel more stable, and you can create some space for yourself through the top side. And then when your leg is long and your arm is reaching up, just let your leg find the floor. Hopefully the lower leg is out the way. And with your big toe in touch with the ground, just let that top leg slide a little bit forwards and backwards. Particularly backwards, that's where there's a bit of opening maybe in the front of the hip that you can have. Great. And then you just rest that leg back on top of the other. And then you turn to the other side or move to the other side in whatever way that happens. And then once you're there, you can take a moment again, just dropping into that side, really feeling the weight, the connection with the ground, maybe adding a little bit of a rocking, really allowing that lower side to connect with the ground. And then you might bring that top hand in front of you. You might close your now lower eye and keep your top eye open, and then just move your hand into a hover in parallel to the floor. And see if that eye can follow your hand, or you just do the movement and let your eyes rest. And then just freestyling it a little bit. Where does the arm, where can it go? Where can maybe the eye still follow? What's sort of in the easier range? Where is it harder? And if you're not doing the eye, you can also just go with how does it feel in the shoulder, or somewhere else? Like what movements are feeling good or a little bit difficult, but in a good way. It's surprising how tired the shoulder or the arm gets. And then, of course, you might make that range a little bit bigger, where your arm goes or your hand goes more towards the ceiling, and your head needs to support where the eye is going if you're keeping your eye or eyes with the hands. So opening up to the ceiling, turning towards or rolling onto the back of your head. tracking the hand perhaps. So again, with that bigger movement, checking what feels good about that. Is there something that gets to open or stretch or loosen? And then you might do the whole circle with your hand staying in touch with the floor, and you're letting your head follow the hand as much as possible, depending on where that's comfortable, possible, and of course, what else might be in the way. If you are doing it with the one eye, this might be very different to how the other eye was. And then come back onto your side, taking your time to finish the one you're doing. And finding your top hand then finds your top knee. And the two connect and come to a hover again. So the lower leg and the lower shoulder, lower hip can really drop into the ground to support this. And then you press through the foot and reach through the arm in opposite directions, really getting long through your top side and bringing the two back together again. And you might take one or two of these to really focus on the moving arm and leg, but you can also just do them and then just notice what happens in the lower side as you go through the movement, and how does that make it different. If you're really allowing the lower side to take the weight of the top side, or to really sort of stand or lie heavy into the ground to keep yourself more stable. And then when your leg is long next time, you can just find the floor with that foot, your arm can come back, and then you just slide your top leg a little forwards and backwards. And see where the hip can open. Maybe there's a bit of opening to the side as well. And then let that leg come back on top. Taking a moment, just resting there. And just noticing what it's like when there's actually stillness. And then in a moment, you're going to turn onto your front with your hands supporting your forehead. So again, just notice that, that knowing of how you're going to do that, how you might turn or pick yourself up and turn yourself over, however that happens, and then move into that. So you turn around to lie on your front, supporting the head if that's possible, or you can use a block or cushion as well. but you might need your hands there, if that's okay. And you can take a moment also just letting your heels then rock a little side to side. So you're just giving yourself some time in this position with the front of your body now being in contact with the ground and the back of you having all this space around it. And you could also close your eyes if that feels good. Just having that sort of hidden quality. If you like, you could bend your knees so your feet are pointing to the ceiling and then let them roll a little side to side. Again, adding a bit more movement in the hip and the back as well, but in a good way, hopefully. And letting the thighs be really heavy as the feet are light again, but in this position. You might also sense various bone structures against the mat, like obviously the thigh bones or the front of the pelvis in certain areas. Maybe the lower front ribs. And of course, the skull where your forehead is on the hands. And then let your legs stretch out long again, reaching a little bit through the toes and through your tail. And then you might push the floor away with your hands. You might keep your eyes closed if you like. And you just let your head lift a little, but the lower ribs in front, they stay heavy on the mat. So you're not going very high. And then you're dropping back down again. And if you have your eyes closed, you can really tune into your ears with this movement. And also it doesn't matter what it looks like. So you have that sense of letting your lower ribs be a little bit of the base as well as the rest of your body. And as you go up and down and you send the floor away with your hands, it's like when you're coming up, your quality of hearing is a little different. It's almost like whatever noises there are, you could just take a moment to tune into them. Are there any sort of quiet or less quiet background noises around you? And then as you press away, it's like bringing your ears a little more into the world so you can hear. And you could then even turn your head and follow one ear a little bit over one shoulder. And then letting your head turn the other way, not so that you can see, but so that you can hear more with one ear or the other. Might make that a bit different. And you can keep it at this level, or if you're quite happy going higher than that, of course, you could lift yourself up a little more and let your lower ribs leave the ground. So you're coming higher up as long as your back feels comfortable with that, or you might just keep it a little lower. If you want to take it to a bigger movement, your hands would then come next to your ribs with your elbows close to your rib cage as well. And you could then sort of move up, press up into a bit of a more of what they call a swan. And still you might do it with your eyes closed and your ears wanting to be more explorative. And just again, checking how that makes that movement different. And staying connected to whatever it is you're hearing as well. Nice. And however high you're coming up, next time you're pushing yourself up and your ears are going up in the world, continue to push yourself back so you can move towards your heels and you can sit back a moment, maybe dropping back onto your heels, taking a few breaths, rocking a little side to side. Maybe still letting your eyes rest or your whole face. And then slowly roll yourself back up, finding briefly an upright position again. We're not here for very long, just so we're, well, coming back upright again in whatever shape or form. And just briefly acknowledging when you're there, how it is to be upright again, how you're now naturally maybe assembling yourself. Maybe having a look around and checking what else is a bit different. Testing things out a bit. And if one or two words come to you that somehow describe your experience, then you can let them pop up in a moment when I'm turning off the recording. So that will be now.